Good morning. Let's go over decimal review and practice number 2. Number 1 says underline the digit in the hundredths place. Well, here we see the hundredths place is 2 places to the right of the decimal. So in each of these problems, we'll find the decimal first. We'll count 2 places to the right to find our hundredths place. So in letter A, there's a 2 in the hundredths place. Here's our decimal, 1, 2. B has 9 in the hundredths place. Here's our decimal, 1, 2. C has 0 in the hundredths place. And in letter D, here's our decimal, 1, 2, 3 in the hundredths place for letter D. In the second section, you're asked to write the decimal numbers in expanded form. So number 2 says 1 and 824 thousandths. We'll write 1 plus, there's an 8 in the tenths place, so we'll write 8 tenths plus a 2 in the hundredths place, so we'll write 2 hundredths plus a 4 in the thousandths place, so we'll write 4 thousandths. In number 3, we see 709 and 63 hundredths, so we'll write 700 plus a 9 in the ones place, plus a 6 in the tenths place, and a 3 in the hundredths place. If you put a 0 between the 7 and the 100 and you wrote 700 plus 0 plus 9, that is okay as well. In the next section, you're asked to round the decimals to the given place value. So number 4, we're asked to round to the tenths place. Step 1, identify the tenths place. There's a 6. Step 2, look to the right. 1 place value, in this case the hundredths place. The 2 will be our clue to help us round the 6. As we can see, the 2 in step 3 tells us to keep the 6 as it is, and so the final answer is 3 and 6 tenths. In number 5, we have 9 and 3,959 10,000ths, but we're asked to round it to the nearest hundredths place. So step 1 says identify the digit in the hundredths place. That's 9. Now we'll look to the right, the 5 as our clue to help us round the 9. And the 5 says round up. Well, what's 1 up from 9? That's 10. So the hundredths place becomes a 0. The tenths place becomes a 3 and a 1, which is a 4. And then we'll write everything that comes before. So 9 and 40 hundredths, or 9 and 4 tenths, is our final answer. Here in the next section, we're asked to use equivalent fractions to convert the following fractions to decimals. So we can turn 25 into 100 by multiplying it by 4. And we'll multiply 18 by 4 as well and get 72 hundredths, which we can write as 72 hundredths. In number 7, we can turn 20 into 100 by multiplying it by 5, which means we have to multiply the 16 by 5, which gives us 80 hundredths. And 80 hundredths can be written as 80 hundredths or 8 tenths. 1 tenth already has a 10 in the denominator, so we'll just write it as 1 tenth, 1 in the tenths place. Number 9 says 16 fiftieths. Well, we can multiply 50 times 2 and get 100. And 16 times 2 is 32. 32 hundredths looks like this. 76 hundredths already has 100 in the denominator, so we'll just write 76 hundredths. And 3/4 can be turned into a decimal by multiplying both parts, top and bottom, denominator and numerator, by 25. That would give us 75 hundredths, which we write as a decimal like this. In the next section, we're asked to use a calculator and convert using long division. So I'll bring up my calculator and we'll divide 10 by 12. And that'll give us 0 and 8 with a 3 that goes on forever, so we'll write a line above the 3. And then 13, let's see, I'll clear that, and we'll divide 2 by 7. And we'll get, wow, that looks like a long decimal, but it's actually a repeating decimal. It's 0.285714, and then that pattern repeats over and over. 0.285714, and the pattern repeats over and over. Now, as long division, back to number 12, we can take 10, let me zoom up a little bit to give me more space to write, and divide it by 12. Well, there are no groups of 12 in 10, so let's add the decimal in and our first invisible 0 in the tens place, which is always there. Now there are 8 12s and 100, and that's 96. We'll subtract and get 4. We'll bring down our next invisible 0 and get 40. There are 3 12s and 40 because 3 times 12 is 36. And we'll get 4, and look at that. Our decimal is going to repeat. We would get, if we brought down the next invisible 0, we'd get another 40. And we know that we're always going to get 40, so that's where we stop. We write a 0 in the ones place, add in our decimal, put a line over the 3, and we get the same answer as we got with the calculator. Now, number 13, we have many steps. So I'm going to go kind of quick, but feel free to pause this video whenever you need to. I'm also going to zoom up because I need plenty of space to write. I know there are going to be 6 steps here. So let's see, we have 2 divided by 7. Let me thin that marker down a little bit. So let's see here. We have no groups of 7 and 2. So let's add in the decimal, the invisible 0. There's 2 groups of 7 and 20. That's 14. We'll subtract and get 6. We'll add our next invisible 0, bring it down. There's 8 groups of 7 and 60. 8 times 7 is 56. Subtract and get 4. Let's bring down our next invisible 0. We'll get 40. There are 5 groups of 7 and 40. 7 times 5 is 35. Subtract that, and we'll get 5. Let's bring down our next invisible 0 to make 50. There are 7 groups of 7 and 50, and 7 times 7 is 49. Subtract that and get 1. We'll bring down our next invisible 0 all the way down. See how I keep things lined up? How super important it is to keep things lined up. There's 1 group of 7 and 10. 1 times 7 is 7. 10 minus 7 is 3. And we'll bring down our next invisible 0 all the way next to the 3. There are 4 groups of 7 and 30. 4 times 7 is 28. And we'll get 2. And if we were to bring down the next invisible 0, we'd see that we'd end up with 20. And 20 is the first number we divided by, which means that whole series, everything here is going to start repeating now, all of this work. So we can just stop, put a 0 in our ones place, bring the decimal straight up into our answer line, and then write a line over all 6 digits because they repeat. Wow, that was a lot of work. Thanks for sticking with me. In the next section, we need to add or subtract the decimal numbers. Let's first start by drawing in the decimal and the 2 invisible zeros to our top number in the subtraction problem. And now we must borrow because we cannot take 5 from 0. So let's take 1 1 and make it 10 tenths. And we'll take 1 of the tenths, leaving 9 tenths, and make it 10 hundredths. 10 hundredths minus 5 hundredths is 5 hundredths. 9 tenths minus 7 tenths is 2 tenths. Bring the decimal straight down into our answer. We cannot take 8 ones from 0 ones, so let's take 1 of the tens. That'll leave us 4 tens and 10 ones. 10 ones minus 8 ones is 2 ones, and 4 tens minus 3 tens is 1 10. And our final answer is 12 and 25 hundredths. In number 15, we're asked to add. I'm going to fatten up my pen first. We'll draw an invisible 0, even though we don't need to, because remember the order doesn't matter when we add. So 0 plus 9 is 9. 7 plus 3 is 10. We'll carry the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. And 5 plus 9 is 14. Carry the 1. And 1 plus 5 is 6. And we'll bring our decimal straight down into our answer. 64 and 9 hundredths is the final answer. And in our last section, we're asked to multiply the decimal numbers. Number 16, step 1. Let's make a ballpark estimate. 3.3 is pretty close to 3. times 9. Our ballpark estimate for this problem is 27. When we're finished, our answer should be around 27. Let's multiply. 9 times 3 is 27. Carry the 2. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus the 2 that we carry is 29. And the only place I can put a decimal between these digits, 2, 9, and 7, that makes my answer close to 27, which is our ballpark estimate, is between the 9 and the 7. And 29 and 7/10 is close to 27, so I know I'm correct. Number 17, ballpark estimate. 8 and 4/10 is close to 8. Times the 2 tells me that when I'm done multiplying, my answer should be around 16. Let's ignore the decimal and multiply. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. The only place I can put a decimal between these digits that'll make my answer close to 16 is right here between the 6 and the 8. 16 and 8/10 is pretty close to 16, my ballpark estimate. Here in 18, we start the same way, ballpark estimate. 3.2 is close to 3 and 99 is close to 100. So our ballpark estimate will be 300. When we're done multiplying, our answer should be around 300. So let's ignore the decimal and multiply. 9 times 2 is 18. Carry the 1, and 9 times 3 is 27, plus the 1 is 28. Second answer line, we'll start with a 0 in the ones place. We'll multiply 9 times 2 is 18. Get rid of that one that we carried and carry our next one. And then 9 times 3 is 27, plus the 1 is 28. And now we can add up our two answer lines. We always add them together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. We'll carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 8 is 11. Carry the 1. And 1 plus 2 is 3. Now, looking back at our ballpark estimate, 300, where is the only place we can put the decimal inside of these digits? That would give us an answer close to 300. That is correct. Between the 6 and the 8. 316 and 8/10 is our final correct answer. Thanks for working with me. Let's get to practicing on today's work.